MLB Pipeline has dropped their top 100 prospects, and once again, the Mariners have 7 prospects in there. However, it's very different from what we saw from Baseball America. So, Joe and I are going to talk about the difference between where some of these players rank, and then we're going to talk about the move the Astros just made, sending Ryan Presley to the Chicago Cubs, what that means for their hopes of re signing Alex Bregman, and what that means for the rest of the Mariners offseason, which I made a tweet about. And that'll be the third topic that we talk about, saying what I think the perfect end to this Mariners offseason will look like. We'll talk about that as well, because apparently Joe says he has some thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching episode 160 of the Hit It Here podcast, part of the Bleav Network. The Chris, the Zachary, the Sean, and the Gage episode of the podcast. All 4 of those guys have donated to our GoFundMe down in the description below, trying to help us bring you the best content while we are in Arizona. And Gage took over the top spot with a $102 donation, the new top dono of the fundraiser. I am here with Joe. Joe, how we feeling?
I am feeling great. It's good to know that there's people out there that want to support just 2 dopes, and that makes me very happy. So appreciate you guys always just coming out, supporting us the best way that you're able to, whether it's just watching the videos, liking the videos, subscribing to the channel, giving us a 5-star review on whatever your preferred podcast platform is, whatever, right? It's always good. Happy to be here. Happy that the Mariners have 7 prospects in the top 100 in both pretty much premier lists as far as prospects are concerned. But Colton, you did mention that there are some subtle differences between Baseball America and MLB Pipelines, and we're going to go over those very quickly here for you guys. So to reiterate, Baseball America has Laz Montes at number 97, Harry Ford at number 95, Felon Selson at number 89, Michael Arroyo at number 77, Johnny Formello at number 70, Cole Young at number 56, and Colt Emerson at number 16. Only 1 prospect inside the top 50, that being Colt Emerson at 16. Colton, your guy, your dude, your prized possession in the Mariners prospect system takes a big jump compared to Baseball America to MLB Pipeline. Laz Montes is the 2nd highest ranked prospect in the Mariners system, coming in at number 42. What do you think would be like the biggest difference between, like, I guess, like, evaluation, why there is that discrepancy? Or do you really think it's just kind of like, that's prospects? Like, there's going to be differences of opinion on where these guys rank.
I think it's a little bit more of the latter. I'd say, yeah, it is. That's just how prospects work. And the thing with, I think there's some other differences in here, but Laz is the biggest jump. He was number 97 in Baseball America, number 42 in MLB Pipeline. Like, that's a huge jump compared to some of these other guys. I think the difference for him is Baseball America is probably focusing a little bit more on his strikeouts and the potential that he's going to be like an everyday DH instead of like maybe a right fielder. Whereas maybe Pipeline is kind of looking more at what he did in 2024 and like kind of what his season will look like this coming year. I think the difference is Baseball America is looking at more of a long-term like projectability with a guy like Laz specifically, which is why he ranks almost out of the top 100 entirely. I think it's interesting that he is ranked above number 49 here, Cole Young. Cole Young was ranked number 56 on Baseball America, number 49 on MLB Pipeline. So not that big of a disparity there, but Laz does sneak in ahead of him. Laz, again, is the biggest jumper here. Harry Ford comes in at 65 on MLB Pipeline and 95 on Baseball America. He ranks as the 4th best prospect on Pipeline for the Mariners and the 6th best prospect in Baseball America for the Mariners. So another interesting jump there. Maybe it is that prospect fatigue with him. Joe, tell me a little bit more about Felon Selson and where he's at here.
So he is the 5th Mariners prospect inside the top 75, coming in at number 74 on MLB Pipeline. He was number 89 on Baseball America. So like not that huge of a difference, but yeah, I think you're looking at his sky high ceiling. Maybe it's not as sky high as people would have originally projected out. And that's, I think, likely due to some of the injuries that he sustained in his early professional career. But again, the fact that they're in the top 100, that goes to show like how good of a prospect they are. Like being in the top 100 across all 30 MLB teams is like nothing to really like scoff at. Like you're saying like, oh, Laz almost wasn't in it in Baseball America's top 100. That's still like a very monumental achievement for a prospect to be in the top 100. So like, even if they're lower on certain lists or higher on others, like regardless, being in the top 100 is a pretty like resounding achievement for these guys. But yeah, Felon, number 74, and then will be Pipeline. Johnny Formello comes up next at 96, and then Michael Arroyo at 98. So they're a little bit less willing to give the big jumps to those guys like Arroyo and like Farmelo, because Arroyo jumped into number 77 on Baseball America and Farmelo jumped up to number 70. So there's a little bit of, like you said, like differences there, but I don't think there's really that much to kind of like hang your hat on. It is just like difference of opinions and like what they might project out for prospects long term. If they're looking at them as far as like a longer projectability, that could be a difference. If they're looking at what they did in 2024, that could be a difference. Certain guys like Michael Arroyo had a great 2024, but Johnny Farmelo didn't play that much because he tore his ACL. Like, it's interesting how these kind of things shake out, but regardless, 7 prospects, all the 7 same prospects in the top 100, regardless of their order, the Mariners have 7 top 100 prospects in all of baseball, and that's a consensus opinion across 2 major lists for prospects.
And I think the thing that I find the most encouraging between the 2 lists is Colt Emerson being in the top 20 on both.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, maybe when he was first drafted, he was like, what, number 2 or 3 on like the Mariners prospect list. But it's pretty clear that throughout the industry, he is seen as one of the very higher echelon players, or soon to be players in Major League Baseball. I think that when we see Colt Emerson, will vary depending on just kind of where the team is at and obviously how he continues to develop. But the fact that he is in the top 20 on both lists bodes really well for his future in Major League Baseball. Cole Young, again, 49 and 56, so pretty steady there. I think it's almost better to see them steady between the 2 than to see a big disparity, because I think that when everyone can agree, then it seems like a pretty consensus topic that, yeah, these guys are going to be pretty good. But one thing that worries me is we don't know when these guys are going to get here. And that's the hard part with prospects. Obviously, Cole Young might happen this year. The rest of them, who knows? Harry Ford, probably this year at some point. The Mariners need help. And they're going to really need it because the Astros just traded Ryan Pressly to the Chicago Cubs. Now, you may be like, oh, well, that's a good thing. Like, the Astros got worse in that trade. They did. They got worse in 2025. But the optics of the trade, when you realize that they saved $8.5 million on Ryan Pressly's contract, means they could probably send that back out to Alex Bregman, which has been a big topic of conversation over the past couple of days. Joe, can you break down what has been talked about with Jose Altuve possibly moving to left field, and just what re-signing Bregman would mean for the Astros and then for the Mariners?
I mean, you kind of like not to say that you took away the main point there. That's like the interesting aspect is, yeah, their infield right now consists of Christian Walker at first base, who they signed in free agency. Obviously, Jose Altuve. They have Jeremy Pena at shortstop, and they traded for Isaac Paredes in the Kyle Tucker trade. As you said, optics of that, if they were to bring Bregman back, is Bregman moves back to third, and Paredes would go to second. Is the first thing that I saw, which I thought was interesting. I just figured like Paredes maybe fits better at third base, and Bregman's a better athlete, would fit better at second. Regardless, I mean, however it works, it doesn't matter. Bregman being added back into that infield, obviously there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Who's got to move? Jose Altuve has come out and been like, hey, go put me out in left field. I'll go hang out in the Crawford boxes. I mean, defensive left fielders in Houston, they're not going to be overly important. I mean, that's where Yordan plays. He's not the best defensive outfielder. You can kind of hide them over there because the Crawford boxes are that big of like a park factor. Having Altuve out there, I don't think it's going to be as big of a detriment as like maybe people think initially. And I think as a very tenured professional, Altuve would be someone that could figure it out. I don't know if he's got any time in the minor leagues, like way back when as an outfielder, but I saw like a funny tweet where it was like, I know, I don't know who the person was, but this is like from their perspective. I know that Bagwell is talking to Dana Brown and saying like, yo, Biggio moved to the outfield. He was our second baseman, like just like likening it to that kind of aspect. And yeah, that's bad for the Mariners in the sense that you'd think that an offseason where the division winner trades their best player. Is it safe to say Kyle Tucker's their best player?
I'd say so.
Trades their best player, trades their closer, who maybe not closer anymore, but veteran, high leverage reliever who has been absolutely nails in the postseason every single time he gets the ball. In an offseason where they trade those two guys, they are still better than you heading into the regular season because of moves that they were able to make and able to be creative with to bring back a guy like Alex Bregman, who has been a cornerstone guy for them as far as their success is concerned. losing Bregman would be a big blow to their lineup and just like their overall offensive identity, I think. Yes, they have Paredes, they have Christian Walker to kind of mitigate that. But if then you add that back into the fold, like the loss of Kyle Tucker doesn't loom as large. The loss of Ryan Presley doesn't loom as large. You can probably patch together the bullpen a bit more. And the thing about the Astros last year is their pitching staff, largely their rotation, was hurt. A lot of them. Javier, JP France. I mean, I don't know if we really care to say Justin Verlander in that same sense, but like Verlander a little bit. Like there
Framber
was,
missed a lot of the season too.
yeah, like Luis Garcia. Like there's, I mean, Lance McCullers. Like there's so many names where, yes, they ended up being okay. And how do those guys kind of like fill out the pitching staff and the rotation and the bullpen going to this year? Like they're a year healthier, essentially. Like losing Ryan Presley, I don't think is as big of a blow, mainly because they have Josh Hader. So they still have their ninth inning guy no matter what. And they can figure out the bullpen beyond that. It is a bad situation for the Mariners if Bregman goes back to Houston, because Bregman was the perfect candidate to go to Seattle to fill a position of need. Obviously, the semantics of that was never going to happen regardless. So, like, given what we know about the front office and the ownership group and how much money the Mariners had to spend, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like a lot of this offseason was operating under the pretense that, like, they knew Bregman's offer from the Astros was not enough for what he wanted. He's had two competitive offers on the table, likely from the Cubs and the Tigers at this point, probably. I don't know if the Red Sox are still considered in that, but regardless, Cubs and Tigers maybe were the final two up until 12 hours ago, or however many hours ago the Ryan Presley trade happened. And now it seems like the next move for the Astros is likely being, hey, we just got $8.5 million more. Would you like that, Alex Bregman, to come play baseball again in Houston? And that is it's an overall negative for the Mariners, just because the window of opportunity was pretty wide open, because it felt like the Astros taking a step back. Now it's very much so a lateral offseason, a retooling offseason for the Astros.
And the Astros are a team where, when you look at their outfield without Alex Bregman, so assuming Paredes stays at third, you have Dubon in left. You have like Chas McCormick or Jake Myers in center and Chas McCormick in right. That's a terrible outfield.
Can I say something?
I mean, yeah.
Zip's projection had Taylor Trammell as the main left fielder for the Astros,
really?
as far as like the breakdown by WAR position was concerned. Like Trammell was slated to be the most like plate appearances, most production given to, or most opportunity given to for the Astros in left field, up until if anything happens with Bregman.
Right, and again, nothing has happened yet. Just so we're clear, don't like make this. Don't unless it happens after we record this, in which case we're not re-recording. But nonetheless, I think that the best case scenario for the Mariners is Bregman signs elsewhere for a multitude of reasons. First, it makes the Astros worse, just plain and simple. With that being said, are the Astros still a better team than the Mariners right now? In my opinion, yes, because the Mariners have not done jack. This up. Adding Christian Walker, even if you lose Kyle Tucker and Ryan Presley, adding Christian Walker and adding Isaac Paredes makes that team stronger than the Mariners immediately. Now, that's not to say the Mariners still can't make moves. If that was the final team for the Astros, the Mariners could still make moves to catch up to that. They absolutely could, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But for the Mariners, it's starting to become too little too late, and there have been rumors that there's going to be another trade coming up here. But the thing with, if Alex Bregman signs with the Astros, that means he's not signing with the Red Sox, and that means he's not signing with the Cubs. Two teams that the Mariners have been heavily involved in trade talks with, if he was to sign with the Cubs. Now, we heard this a little bit from the Kramer article, I believe it was last week, where he said if Bregman signs with the Cubs, the reason the Mariners are waiting on his decision, and then Nico Horner might become available again. Mm-hmm. If he was to sign with the Red Sox, all of a sudden Tristan Casas is available again. So again, it does still feel like we're kind of waiting on this move to be made, and it sounds like it's all kind of coming to a head because, like you said, the Astros do have more money now to offer Alex Bregman in 2025. But if he does sign with the Astros, that means that neither of those teams are going to view the players I just mentioned as available, which sucks. Mm-hmm. Because, Joe, I made a tweet. That's right, a tweet that said, I think the perfect way to end the Mariners offseason would be adding Nolan Arenado and adding Tristan Casas. And I don't think that you can add Tristan Casas unless Bregman signs with the Red Sox. But you have thoughts on this tweet, so please.
Before I give my kind of 2 cents, a reply that I saw it immediately and I wanted to like respond, but I chose not to. Drew Miller, bless your heart. The best. This is a response to your view of the perfect offseason remaining being Arenado and Tristan Casas. This response being the best would be Vladdy and Bregman. Now, Drew, I'm not a partaker in any of the fun stuff. However, could you slide some to me? I understand that
he's right.
He's right. Yeah, like in a vacuum, right? In a world where Mariners ownership doesn't exist, in a world where all these current, like, we're operating under certain pretenses doesn't exist. Yes, adding Vladdy and adding Bregman is the perfect offseason remaining. Of course, I'm not here to like say like, no, that's wrong. He's right. He's just wrong in the sense of like, that's never going to happen. And like, I don't want to be the person that's like, you have to be a bit more grounded in reality. Cause like, sure, we should want the Mariners to do moves like that because like, yes, that's what a like good operating baseball team would try and accomplish. And, you know, the rumors at the deadline that the Mariners were willing to trade for Vladdy, maybe that inspires confidence, courage, even for people to be like, yeah, Vladdy could still be on the table. I am completely removed from Vladdy. Bregman, no chance. I don't think the Mariners have a chance at acquiring Casas or Arenado. Like, I don't like remainder perfect offseason for you. Amazing. I don't think it's in the realm of possibility to get either of them, given what they've shown in the capacity for the trade market, evaluating the trade market. I mean, the whole like deep dive on Casas and like he didn't fit. Like, why does that matter? I understand, like, sure, he's going to play 81 games in T-Mobile. What about the 81 other games where he's not going to do that? Like, you still employ and roster Dylan Moore, who's got one of the worst home road splits in all of baseball. You're employing him. You're giving him second base. I get that, you know, employing Dylan Moore is probably a bit cheaper in terms of like allocation of like whatever. Like, because you'd have to trade a decent amount to get Tristan Casas. So, like, what you traded to get Tristan Casas is probably more expensive than what you're paying Dylan Moore in 2025, which is like $3 million. What I'm getting at is I don't know if even Arenado and Casas are realistic. And maybe perfect isn't realistic. And that's like a nuance that maybe I'm not understanding from your original tweet. And I'm not here to say like it's a bad idea. Arenado and Casas would be immediate offensive and defensive upgrades for this team and would make the team better. Ultimately, I just don't think it's just not going to happen. I don't know if I've just abandoned my optimism, but like, I don't think that's possible. I don't like, given how much money they have to spend, like, I think we're looking at a lower tier upgrade than both of those guys as the best remaining move. Probably, which is an awful thing to say out loud. Like, I'm saying the quiet part out loud potentially of like, if we go out and acquire, I think Colby posted like a video of like Brendan Rodgers, or maybe it was Ben like doing a Mariner tweet and it was Brendan Rodgers, which then Colby, I think maybe whichever one came first, chicken or the egg, doesn't matter. Colby talking about like, yeah, either way, that Brendan Rodgers could be a realistic target for the Mariners. And it's like, yeah, he's a second baseman. He's won a Gold Glove, I'm pretty sure. Like, the Coors effect is going to be damning to him, like like beyond belief. But like, if we're willing to go out and say acquire, if that does end up being the move, Brendan Rodgers, and there's not a conversation about like whether or not he can hit in T-Mobile, but like we had to have this like, oh, Tristan Casas wasn't a fit. Like, that feels like complete and utter baloney. Is a word that I would say in this setting, but I would choose a different one in private settings. So I don't know. Like, I understand like wanting Arenado and Casas. I think that's like a fine like stance to have, but I really don't see either of them being realistic for the Mariners, regardless of them being like perfect for the remainder of the offseason.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that where my head was at with it is like, yeah, that is what I would want them to do. The rest,
Mhm.
like if they did that, I'd be like, yup, sick. Great end of the offseason. Way to really turn it around.
Yeah.
Do I think it's going to happen? No. Because they're, again, Cassis is already going to be kind of difficult to acquire if the Red Sox don't sign Bregman. And they want you to take on Yoshida's contract. Now, if the Mariners traded Luis Castillo for Tristan Cassis and Masataka Yoshida, is the team better? Yes. The team is better if you trade for Tristan Cassis and Masataka Yoshida than it is leaving it the way it is currently, in my humble opinion. And for Nolan Arenado, you're probably trading prospects. The reason that's not possible for the whole thing is that's too much money. You can't take on Arenado and Yoshida's contract.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to happen. So in a perfect world, you don't have to take on Yoshida's contract, but there is a realm of possibility, in my opinion, where the money does make sense if you don't have to take on Yoshida, which sounds like you do. So this might just be a moot point here, but the money you'd save by trading Castillo, you'd have more than enough. So I don't know. It's definitely one that I think, based on reports that are things we've heard from both Colby and Ben over the past week or so, where Ben said, "I can assure you that this is not the finished product.
Yeah.
There are more moves coming." And as we've been told, there might be moves here in the next 48 hours or so. I
Potentially.
think potentially, yeah. This is all. I mean, this is all speculative, and I think that they are still kind of waiting on that Bregman decision. I think that getting our hopes up is not the right move for us to do, because more than likely it would be like a Brendan Rodgers or even trading for Willie Castro, which I don't hate, but I also like. If the Mariners trade for Willie Castro tomorrow, are they better? Probably.
I think it really depends on like the package. Like
Right.
if they traded Dom Canzone, Trent Thornton, and like a top 15 prospect, they're better. Like you really
It's too
don't.
much in my opinion.
Well, sure, but like what's the asking price going to be? You saw what
Right.
Polanco got, and he was on a bum knee and getting paid double the money. Sure, a better, like a more professional player longer term, but like I think if you give up Dom Canzone and a reliever, you're like, and then like a prospect that's not going to play in 2025, like you got better for 2025 long term probably. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people are down on Thornton. I feel like maybe the regression trend's going to hit him in 2025 potentially. I'm not saying he will or not. Not saying that the Twins accept that. Not saying that the Mariners would offer that. Would I accept that trade for Willie Castro? I think it depends on the prospect, but yes. And I think it's just like I'm at a point where make the MLB roster better or else kind of a thing. Like what else are you waiting on?
Mm-hmm.
Like you got less than a month. Like,
Pitchers and catchers report in a little over 2
do we
weeks.
want Willie Castro to get the Jordan Montgomery effect? That's not necessarily the same thing because, like, obviously he's not with the team and like whatever. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like, people that like aren't signed, players getting to destinations later than others. Like, I don't know. It's just it's a weird off season that felt like it could have been like one of the easiest slam dunk type off seasons that the Mariners could have ever had in this regime, and they haven't done anything. And I think going back, like, dialing back the clocks a little bit, it's rewind time. Randy's the big move, right? Like, and it sucks that that's like the conversation that we have to convince ourselves of. Because I don't want to think that. I think that a normal competitive baseball team can make those transactions in the middle of the year to be competitive towards the end of the year and try and win postseason games and not have to pass that off as the big move of the offseason because he's still here. Like that feels disingenuous to like what a winning team would do. And I'd say that the Mariners are a winning team. Technically, they're above 500. They're winning, but they're not winning the games that everyone cares about, and that's the problem.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think that the hard part for me is, does the team get better by acquiring Willie Castro? Yeah, probably. But does that make them, if Bregman resigns with the Astros, like, does that put them anywhere in the conversation? No. In my opinion, no. Like, you're not competing for a division. And like you said in an earlier segment, like with the Astros feeling like they're regressing a little bit, or not rebuilding, but just kind of losing some of their key players like Tucker, Presley,
Mm-hmm.
Bregman. This felt like the perfect offseason for the Mariners to go out there and add to this team to really make the division theirs. They have the best pitching staff, well, one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball. If their outfield is as good as it was last year, that's a fantastic outfield between Randy, Julio, and Victor. It's those few key spots where if you could fill them with just decent players, you have a very, very good team. And instead, they filled it with a bunch of guys to the pile and Donovan Solano and Miles Mastroboni. Cool. Like that, though, those guys do very, very little to move the needle, and
Mm-hmm.
Donovan Solano included, in my opinion. Yes, he is a great player to add. He is a great finishing touch to an offseason. But as of right now, that is the big move the Mariners have made this offseason. And it's unacceptable in an offseason where it really felt like they had a chance to make some noise in the American League West. And unfortunately, that's just kind of where we have to sit here on January 27th. Because until another move is made, which it sounds like there is one coming, so I don't want to get too doom and gloom
Mm-hmm.
right now. But it has been, what, 3-4 months of this?
Yeah.
Like, just sitting here, nothing happening? Like, at what point do you, like you said, you've kind of lost hope? Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you could feel any other way at this point. Like, I don't know, man. There's still some offseason to go. Not much. Just a little bit of an offseason left. Like, but the time is ticking. And I think that if the Bregman decision happens within the next couple of days, the Mariners got to be ready to pounce quickly on whatever dominoes fall after that.
I will say, I'm not completely like out on the core group of players. I think that there's a fine core
Mm-hmm.
intact, specifically on the pitching side, but offensively, like if you look at Julio having a better year than last year, which I think is reasonable to expect. I think Cal is easy to say that he probably produces at a similar level in 2025 than he did in 2024. I think you can expect Randy to have a little bit better of a year than he did in 2024 than like in 2025. It's looking at guys like Robles, like how will he regress? Will JP bounce back? Is Luke Raley sustainable? Like last year, outside of Cal, your cornerstone guys did not produce as much as they should, and you got more out of your role players. The Mariners haven't raised the floor with their role players necessarily in the way that I think would have made them a more successful team by adding in a more bona fide player and reducing another player to a role type. We're giving Dylan Moore 400 plate appearances next year, probably more. We're giving Ryan, like, I don't want to seem like I'm completely, like I said, out on this team. I think this is still a competitive team on paper. It's when they get on the field in March where they're going to have to show that they're not going to start out slow offensively. We all know what the pitching's going to do, or at least we think we do, because they've done it for the last 2.5 years of just go out there and shove and it'll be lights out, because that's like the backbone of this team is the pitching staff. We watched it for an entire 162 in 2023, I think, outside of maybe the last like 20-ish games. In 2023, it was a lot of the same stuff too. So we're we're mostly just like peddling these like desires of wanting to upgrade offensively because we know how good the team can be with just a slightly better offense. And yeah, adding Bregman, that'd be amazing. An offensive player like that, even if he wouldn't fit in Seattle, I still think he'd give you better offensive production than anybody on the roster right now that can play third base. Sure, would it be worth the $25 million or whatever he's going to end up getting? That's not yet to be really seen because we don't know. But he'd still be a very valuable part of a Mariners offense. So now it's like, okay, how do you reallocate that? How do you redistribute what you want to get offensively out of certain positions? And right now they just haven't added enough to really like feel confident about certain positions going into the season. And so like that's where I think a lot of like the frustration stems from.
No, I think that's completely reasonable. It's been an off season of frustration. I think that's the best way to put it. But with only a few weeks left, hopefully something can come about from this stupid baseball team. But that is going to do it from us here on episode 160 of the Hit It Here podcast. Zachary Spears episode of the podcast, and go Mariners.